Coming up on the Tall Mike Wine Podcast.
Your first name, it's very French sounding. My previous guest was a Frenchman. People might be wondering if I'm changing the show to an all-French guest theme, but I'm not. I not only have coasters now with the logo on them, and now I have stickers. This must be a real podcast.
It is real. I'm waiting for the airplanes with the banners.
Oh, let me write that down.
What was cool about that experience that summer is that I met Carl Sagan. I wanted to go get his autograph, so I went around the corner to see where he was, and he was with his girlfriend, and they were like making out big time.
And now, the Tall Mike Wine Podcast.
The cell phones have been silenced. The wine has been poured. And just like that, the podcast begins. Welcome to episode 15 of the Tall Mike Wine Podcast, the wine podcast that's not all about wine, the wine podcast like no other. I'm Mike Stone, your host. Glad to have you wherever you may be, somewhere in the world, on one of 5 continents, or in one of the 21 countries where people have checked us out. Welcome to the fold, Portugal. Perhaps you're in one of the 40 of these United States who've sampled the podcast. Hello, Vacaville, California, Hockerson, Delaware. Howdy to you in Miami Beach, Florida, and Harriman, Utah. Oh, and I'm so glad they found us in Bothell and Green Acres. Those are both towns in Washington State. Things feel much more complete now that you're here. Your time and attention is appreciated more than you know. If you have friends, please share us with them. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, a rating and a review would be wonderful. They tell me it helps a lot. We are here in the Vintner's Room at Nicholson Ranch Winery in Sonoma, California. I work here, and if you've been paying attention, you know that our boss is a guy named Deepak. He's been my guest a few times. He's the owner of the winery and the winemaker. Now, to today's guest, another one of the crew here at Nicholson Ranch. He is Deepak's right-hand man on the winemaking team. He is the guy in charge of all of the science involved in making the wine. Yes, a bona fide scientist. And he used to work at NASA. I know there's a joke in there somewhere about winemaking not being rocket science, but we have one making our wine. Please welcome Jean-Claude Pijanowski, who around here we call JC. Hi, JC.
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Thanks for having me on your show.
I've been waiting to have you on the show, and I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, me too. Definitely.
Your first name, it's very French sounding. I don't know if you know this, but my previous guest was a Frenchman, my friend Olivier. People might be wondering if I'm changing the show to an all-French guest theme, but I'm not.
Oh, you keep it honest for sure. You're not. I agree.
How did you come up with the name Jean-Claude, or your parents rather?
Oh, my parents had actually. Well, my father's Polish.
Okay,
that's the Pijanowski part.
Very classic Polish-sounding name.
But during World War II, obviously, he had to basically become a refugee.
Okay.
Because of World War II. So he migrated to France.
Okay.
And my dad was born in Bordeaux.
Aha.
Yeah, he's Jean-Pierre, and I'm Jean-Claude. And my son is Jean-Luc.
Jean-Pierre.
Yes.
Jean-Claude. Jean-Luc. If you're not careful, I'm going to slip into my really bad French accent.
Give it a shot, Mike.
We talked about this around here, and every once in a while somebody says, oh yeah, JC used to work for NASA. It's true, right?
Actually, it is true. I worked there twice. Actually, one as an intern.
Okay. During
the Voyager 2 encounter with Uranus.
Which year was that?
That was 79.
So an intern, like just out of college?
No, actually a summer intern.
Oh.
Well, I was still in college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the second time?
Actually, it was a full-time position working with a subcontractor, working for NASA. And we were in charge of basically telemetry and data storage.
What year was that?
That was like 82 to 85.
Good experience working
Excellent
for NASA?
Experience. I loved it. Seriously, some amazing people. My last gig there was actually working for the spacecraft assembly team.
Okay.
So we were building an interplanetary spacecraft called Galileo.
Oh, yeah.
And I was on the test team. Actually, I was the test conductor's assistant. which was really kind of a cool gig because I was right next to the head honcho, the chief engineer for building interplanetary spacecrafts.
Wow.
So, and my job was just to track all the commands, all the procedures, and just make sure everything was like, we're on schedule, we're issuing the right commands, there's no mistakes. So it was definitely a very cool gig.
That's one of those things when you tune into a launch or a landing or any of those things, it's like everything is so scheduled out to the hundredth of a second. And it's all, of course, programmed by computers. And I think it was programmed by computers back then too, right?
Of course.
Now the computers are just so much more powerful.
And smaller.
Right.
It's amazing how things have advanced in the past.
You got some guy sitting there on his iPhone. Yeah, I just launched it. Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean your Apple cell phone has as much computing power as the Apollo command module. I mean, that's how crazy it's evolved. I mean, when I was working at NASA, there was a whole room full of computers, and nowadays it's like a footprint of like 10 square feet. There's like 2 racks of computers, and that's it.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing. And it used to be a whole room.
Amazing.
It just changed.
Should we sip some wine?
Absolutely.
Background on this wine is that I started thinking about the wines that I typically bring into the podcast when I bring them from home, and I bring them from my own collection. Sometimes we sip the Nicholson Ranch wines, but today I brought some wines in. And last night I was thinking, the wines that I bring in, and the second wine that we're going to taste today is a perfect example of this. It is an aged wine that's a little bit on the obscure side. And I start thinking, we talk about these wines on the podcast, but if it's a wine that somebody listening to the podcast can't just go out and buy, well, that's kind of unfair, right? We're kind of dangling this carrot in front of people. So I thought, what can I do? I'm going to do something fun. So this was later in the evening last night after I'd had a cocktail. And I thought, I'm going to go across the highway from where I live to the Bevmo store and find some interesting bottle of wine. I really just dislike Bevmo for wine. I love Bevmo for liquor because they have a huge selection of all the different kinds of liquor, and it's wonderful. And I love a good cocktail. And they've got a great beer selection. But wine, it's kind of like just all the crap and nothing great. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go into Bevmo and I'm going to find the most interesting bottle of white wine that I can. And I didn't find one. I found a rosé instead. But this bottle of rosé is very interesting because it comes from a region in France called Tavel. That's Tavel. Tavel is part of the Rhone region. And Tavel is right across the river from Châteauneuf-du-Pape, where they make delicious blends, mostly red, but some whites. But in Tavel, they only make rosé. And I believe this might be the only little region in the world where they're only making one kind of wine, and it's rosé. They grow a few different grapes. The main grapes in Tavel and in this wine are Cinsault and Grenache, a couple of red wine grapes. Of course, that's how rosé is made. There are no rosé grapes. There are no pink grapes that make pink wine. Rosé is made like a red wine at the beginning, and then they start making it like a white wine, stopping the process of making a red wine just a few hours in. And so this is Tavel, is the name of the region. The winery is called Vigne du Roy, and this is a 2019 rosé. What do you think of it?
Well, I like the color. Really beautiful color for sure.
Very dark pink.
In the aromatics, there's definitely fruit. There's no flaws. I mean, what I look for normally with wines is flaws.
Sure.
Because it becomes very subjective, beyond that point as far as wine tasting.
Do you like it or not? Well, I could like it and you could hate it, but we could both agree that this wine is not flawed.
Not flawed, and so far so good.
Okay, so it's got really nice fruit on the nose. I'm getting like strawberries and watermelon.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
This wine, on the couple days we had a couple weeks ago, where it was 100 degrees on ice.
Oh, I bet it's great.
This would be amazing.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
All right, let's take a sip.
Definitely. Well, I like the acidity. It's not terribly acidic. It's really soft.
You're right. You're right. I'm waiting for my mouth to really start watering, and it's not.
No.
But it does have this nice mouth coating effect.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's not thin, too.
No. I would say this is a medium body rosé. Wow. It almost has some real like red wine style complexities.
No, it's really quite good. It's not sweet, Which
okay.
Is,
well, there you go. So I got a bottle of like $13 rosé.
It's an awesome bottle of rosé. We recommend this bottle, definitely.
That's right. If you can find it at Bevmo, La Vigne du Roy, Tavel 2019 Rosé. And yes, Tavel, they only make rosé. That's their deal. That's all they do. Oh, and there's also some history here. Tavel, they've been making these wines in Tavel for like 1,000 years. And some of the big fans, I guess, I don't know how they can fact check this, but some big fans of the Tavel wines were a couple of the famous kings, Philip the Fair, or Philippe. That was Philippe IV, and he goes back to like the 1200s. And then the Sun King, Louis XIV, apparently was a big fan of the wines from Tavel. You study French wine, you're studying history, lots of it.
Yeah, I think they finally got their act together. This is a great bottle.
The French are finally figuring out how to make decent wine. Good for them. Let's applaud them. Hey, we've got the coasters here, the official coasters. What do you think of the coasters, JC?
Actually, I like the illustration. I mean, it's definitely a little bit of an art piece there.
Yeah, I can't take credit for the illustration.
No, it's really quite nice. I like it.
Some guy made a cartoon image of a picture of me.
And I can tell you're really into the wine. I mean, you're closing your eyes. You're going for the aromatics.
I like to close my eyes when I'm smelling the wine because I think it helps me to focus.
Oh, I agree. No distractions, for sure.
So I not only have coasters now with the logo on them, and if anybody wants a few coasters mailed to them, drop me a line to the Gmail, and I'll send you a handful of coasters. It's tallmikewine@gmail. And now I have stickers in the same image, basically the same size as the coasters. Yeah, so we have all sorts of promotional material now. This must be a real podcast.
It is real. I'm waiting for the airplanes with the banners.
Oh, I like that idea. Oh, let me write that down. Airplanes with banners. So I got the stickers because a couple of people that I have shown the coasters to were like, oh man, if that was a sticker, I'd put it on my water bottle. So I got some stickers printed. I can send stickers, coasters, whatever. tallmikewine@gmail. Let me know you're here. Let me know you're tuned in. And we'll give you some coasters to set your wine on while you listen to the podcast. So, JC, what got you into science as a kid? I know all kids go through a phase where like they're into dinosaurs and stuff like that.
Well, I think it was my father because he worked for NASA at Jet Propulsion Laboratories in Pasadena. So we were always a space-faring kind of family. I mean, we were always into space exploration, especially.
So when you were young, your father, Jean-Pierre, was working for NASA?
Actually, he was. He worked on a variety of projects. One of the ones that he really enjoyed was the Viking project. Okay. It was the first lander on the planet Mars. And there was two of those, and they were very successful.
So that inspired you?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's like rocket time. You know, people were going to space, the Apollo missions.
Right.
You know, I was outside when I was, how old was I? I forget. I think I was 8 when Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong were walking the moon. Wow. I was like staring up to the moon.
I was quite a bit younger than that, but I was alive. And it's a very, very vague memory for me. Were you living in Florida?
No, we were living in Pasadena. I mean, NASA has a facility called JPL.
Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Correct. And they built, design, and test basically all of our interplanetary spacecraft.
Sure.
Voyager, Viking, Galileo, Cassini project. I mean, there's all these spacecrafts that are unmanned that are built and tested there.
Mm-hmm. So then you went off to college to study
to study business.
Oh, you studied really?
Of all things,
this story keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, so it was sort of like a real detour. You know, I was thinking more of the economics of it all. You know? Okay. But if I had to go back in time, I think I would have definitely switched into some sort of engineering.
What college did you attend?
Loyola Marymount University. Okay.
That's right down there somewhere.
It's actually in near Santa Monica.
Yeah, it's in LA.
Really nice Jesuit school.
Yeah, and you didn't study science.
You
were in a STEM student.
But my friends were all physicists or physics majors. Okay, chemistry majors. So my little circle of friends were all science majors. Okay, that was kind of interesting.
Then how did you get to NASA from there?
Well, I had a summer internship when I was a junior in college. Okay. And I really enjoyed it, and I did well, on this. It was called the MTIS team. It was recording telemetry and images from the Voyager 2 spacecraft. And what was cool about that experience that summer is that I met Carl Sagan. He came to my department to film his Cosmos series.
Cosmos, PBS.
PBS. So he came by, we talked and we all saw him. And a funny little story. I went to go get his autograph. So I went around the corner to see where he was, and he was with his girlfriend, and they were like making out big time. So,
you saw Carl Sagan making.
So he was like, for me, he's like the rock star of scientists.
Right, he was a rock star, getting the chicks,
and he was like on Tonight Show. I mean, he was really
he was always talking about billions and billions of years.
He was like the poster child for science, for rocketry, for astrophysicists.
I remember that very well when he was like huge.
He was huge. Big,
like he's the smartest man in the world or something.
Absolutely. So that was really cool to actually meet him during that summer.
So now you're in the wine universe.
Yes.
How did that happen?
That was like a twist of fate.
Oh, okay.
Because actually I was at NASA, and then we had the first space shuttle blew up.
1986.
And that was the Challenger.
I remember that.
Yes. And what happened was we were integrating our spacecraft, the Galileo spacecraft, which was going to Jupiter, with the shuttle Atlantis. So once that accident happened, my project shut down.
Oh.
Totally shut down. I mean, basically the spacecraft was put into a warehouse, and that was it.
The Galileo.
But then I eventually, they were laying off people, so I decided to volunteer, considering that I was the youngest guy on the test team, and everybody else had mortgages and was married. So, and I was ready for a change. So I left working for NASA, and then I ended up working on Santa Catalina Island. And that was a real change. I worked for the Boy Scouts of America.
The coast of Los Angeles.
Yes, I worked for the Boy Scouts of America as a Boy Scout Ranger. That was a really wonderful gig. Definitely enjoyed that very much. It was like for 5 years I did that.
You were stationed there?
I was stationed
on Catalina?
Camp Cherry Valley.
Wow.
On Santa Catalina Island. And I had a nice little house on the beach. It was really wonderful. But that's where I met my wife, Anjali. We met at the camp. She was working at the camp in the fall and the spring for another company called Catalina Island Marine Institute.
Okay.
We met there. We fell in love.
She also a scientist?
She is a scientist in the sense that she teaches science.
Okay.
She's
a scientist.
For fourth graders right now.
Legit cred right there.
No, for sure. So we met. Then we moved together to, she went back to school to get her teacher's credential at Humboldt State.
Okay.
And then she found...
So now you're up here in Northern California.
Yes. And then when she graduated, she found a job in Napa. So we all moved to Napa.
Okay.
And that's how I got into the wine business.
Here comes a rocket scientist.
Well, it was the only game in town was to be in the winemaking industry. So I decided to jump in.
So because people don't realize this, I guess, unless they think about it. But just like I was saying, all of those NASA missions are programmed precisely with the science to happen on time, second by second by second. Winemaking can be the very same concept. It's like everything is really written out in advance. Like, this is what we're going to do. Here's how the grapes are going to come in, and here's the day we're going to do it. And then, of course, all the data starts to come in once you start examining the grapes. You've got to test them for sugar content, and you've got to look for little things in the vineyard. And then when they come in and it's winemaking time, then all the science. And that's what you were in charge of here.
Exactly. The science is important. I mean, we get like some rudimentary or some basic numbers to look at.
Yeah. I mean, we have the science and we use it because if you don't have the science, the chances of your wine being crappy go way up.
That is true.
If you're just winging it. Wine's been made for thousands of years. It's a simple process of fermenting grape juice and then eventually drinking it. And you get a little drunk, and that's what everybody wants. But we were talking about this wine, and the more I sip this rosé, the more texture I'm getting.
There is texture. It's got some body to it, some weight.
Vanilla to it. It's just, this is really amazing.
I mean, for a $12 bottle of rosé, that's a bargain.
Yeah, bargain. I might have to go buy more of this stuff. So if you're not using the science, the chances of having a flawed wine or not having the best wine you can possibly make is going to be out there, right?
Well, you have to use what's available to you, and we, fortunately, how science has evolved, we have instruments that can help us. Though in the end, we definitely taste what we've got. Right. I mean, that's going to make the decision. Is actually the aromatics, the color, the taste, and at Deepak and I, it's like we'll look at the numbers very carefully, and they kind of give us a guide, but in the end, it's going to be sort of like how the experience is.
It's your palate.
Absolutely.
You're tasting, you're smelling, and the decisions are made, I'm guessing, on with a combination.
It's a combination of both.
Data
Absolutely.
and the soft science, which is the tasting and the smelling.
Well, like you said, they've been making wine for thousands and thousands of years, and no one knew there was yeast that was the trigger, until like 100 or some odd years ago. I mean, and we are so dependent on this whole microbiology of organisms. It's really quite amazing. I mean, right now, they're going to send up yeast and bacteria in 2022 to the space station to work on fermentations. It'll help us.
Will they be making wine in a weightless environment?
They tested wine already in space.
You told me about that.
Yeah, it was actually a couple of years ago, in 2019. They sent up a case of a Bordeaux wine, and what was the wine called? I'm trying to have a moment.
One of those really expensive.
Oh, it was a Petrus 2000, and it goes for about $6,000 to $8,000 a bottle.
Sure.
So they sent the case up.
Wow.
It was up there for a year and a half. They brought it back down, and they did a blind taste of the space wine next to the same wine that was aged on the ground. And there was a consensus that, first of all, the quality was still there. Great quality, everything was spot on, but they believe the wine aged 3 years longer in space.
Really?
Some kind of time delay.
Wait, how long was it there?
A year and a half.
Oh, so it aged twice as fast.
They think it aged twice as fast in space than it did on the ground.
So if you could build your wine cellar in space, you can store your ageable wines for half as long and then start drinking them.
Exactly. What a strategy. Yeah.
Problem solved.
Problem solved. I like. So that's an experiment. And there's a real push to see how these things work in space,
Are you going to go back if they ask you to come to space? If they shoot you in a rocket ship?
I think I would go with Jeff Bezos. I like his Blue Origin rocket.
He wants to go in space.
Well, he's going to go July 20th.
Oh, is he? It's coming up that soon?
July 20th, Jeff, his brother.
Goodness.
There's a surprise passenger who bid $26 million for the seat.
All right.
And then there's one woman, Wally Mack. She was part of the original Mercury 13 astronaut corps, and it was all women. There was the Mercury 7, which John Glenn was a part of, and the other astronauts. And then there was a Mercury 13. And she was the youngest cadet on this training team that did the exact same training as the other astronauts, the male astronauts. So she is going to space with Jeff Bezos. And she'll be the oldest person to ever go to space at 82.
Hopefully they give her some of that wine when they get up there.
I would think they would bring a bottle up with them.
All right. Well, I wish Jeff Bezos all the best, but don't get me started on the extravagance of private citizens spending lots and lots and lots of money to go into space. Because
someone's got to do it, because the public, the general masses, have to get access to space. And this is how you do it. If a guy like Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, who's going to go up July 11th on his spacecraft, then you and I could perhaps one day go to space. For sure, our children.
I don't know that I'm ready to go to space.
Well, one way or another, we're going to space. That's a fact.
Well, we're going to have to get the hell off this planet eventually. That's for sure.
Yeah, we are the talking monkeys, and we're going to have to leave the womb and move on.
Well, let's talk about what's happening in the vineyards here at Nicholson Ranch right now. The vintage is 2021. What can you tell us about the vintage as the grapes are growing? I walk people into the vineyard pretty much every day, and we look at the little green grapes that are growing, and they're almost to the right size. It looks like to me, my untrained eye.
They're getting there. We're waiting for variation, for the color to turn.
Once they get to the size they're going to get to, they stop growing and they start ripening.
They start ripening. So this is going to be a challenging year in general for a lot of people, just because of the lack of water.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have a lower crop yield.
It's been a couple of years since we've had a rainy winter.
Yes.
Now, this is something I get asked a lot here. They say, fires last year, the big fires, all that smoke, people talking about smoke taint. And then harvest came last year after the fires, and we made all of our grapes into wine, and everything seems to be positive, right? All the wine that's now down in the barrels in the cave from 2020 is okay.
Actually, it is. Deepak and I were quite focused on looking into the smoke taint issue.
Yeah, that's the science.
So we've had actually another laboratory called ETS in St. Helena, and they're a certified lab, and they do great work. We look for two compounds that are sort of like the components of smoke taint. One's called guaiacol and 4-methyl-guaiacol. And we check our levels every 3 months.
Okay.
And we are well below the threshold
Okay.
where things can turn. Thankfully, we were far away from the glass fire, which happened last year. Other folks near that area, though, are not so lucky.
Yeah, a lot of wineries in Napa are not making any red wines from 2020.
There's a lot of wineries that will not have a vintage
Leaving
for
the grapes
2020.
on the vine because they're tainted. There's no way you're going to make good wine from that, so why bother even harvesting the grapes?
That's true. That is very true.
Let's taste the second wine, which I did bring from home from my collection. This is a red wine from Chile. Chile is an up-and-coming region, although they've been growing grapes and making wine there for a long time. Not as long as they have been in France, of course, but this is a Carmenere. Carmenere is the name of the grape, and it's from 2014, so it's got a little age on it. The name of the winery is Di Martino, and this is one of their single vineyard wines called Alto de Piedras. This is from the Maipo Valley in Chile, and I did a little bit of research on Carmenere and Chile. The grape Carmenere in Chile was, for about 150 years, misidentified by the Chileans as Merlot. I know. So Carmenere used to be, long time ago, another one of the Bordeaux grapes. They used to add it to the Bordeaux wines along with Petit Verdot to add some nice dark color to the wines of Bordeaux. So most people know the 5 Bordeaux varietals that they grow in Bordeaux, France: Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. Malbec, of course, is super popular just next door to Chile and Argentina nowadays. But Carmenere used to be one of the Bordeaux grapes, and it just sort of fell out of fashion a few hundred years ago. Oddly, the people in Chile, when they started growing wine grapes, they had some cuttings from France, and they thought they were Merlot, and they were planting them, and then they thought this other kind of odd-tasting Merlot was just a different clone of Merlot. So they're blending them all together. And so I guess for the longest time, people said, oh, the Merlot from Chile tastes different. Well, it turns out, now here's where I'm going to go into the funny French accent again. Back in the 90s, some French guy shows up in Chile. He's, I have come from France. Basically, they take him out into the Merlot vineyard, and he says, this is not Merlot. This is the Carmenere. And they're all like, what? What's he saying? I don't understand his accent. Again, the science that gets to work on the grapes that they're calling this odd clone of Merlot, they say, no, what you have here is Carmenere. You're making delicious wine, but you have to start calling it Carmenere because that's what it is. So that's what we're tasting right now. Di Martino, 2014, Alto de Piedras. What do you think?
Visually, I love the color again. Beautiful, beautiful color. The aromatics, very clean. Now I'm going to taste it.
Oh, man. It's really good.
Oh, nice texture.
It has a lot of really nice non-fruit flavors going on.
And it's got a really long finish.
I get like this big hit of like tobacco.
Okay.
Right? Almost like I'm drinking tobacco juice. Nice.
Tobacco juice.
Not like somebody spit chewing tobacco into a spittoon and I'm drinking that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm like, if you put tobacco leaves in a juicer, maybe that's what I'm saying. But I'm not 100% sure. Again, tasting wine and blurting out the first thing you think you taste is kind of the art.
Though, yeah, the fruit is a little bit more subdued, but yeah. I would have to agree that there's something else going on.
It's not a fruity wine.
No, but I do like the flavors.
This is a Carmenere. Let's see if I've got all my notes here. I just wanted to make sure I hit all the points that I was going to hit. Yes, they don't have it in France too much anymore. 1994, the scientist, the ampelographist, came from France. Jean Bossiquot, a researcher at Montpellier's School of Enology, who found that an earlier ripening vine was Bordeaux Carmenere, not Merlot. So like I said, they bring a French guy in and he ruins everything.
He ruins everything. That's French. You have to be careful about those guys.
Let's see. They're also growing a lot of Carmenere in the state of Washington, where I'm from.
I wonder if they can take the heat.
Well, I think that's the reason they're growing it, is because it can handle the heat.
Yeah, that's
They
interesting.
have really long growing days in Washington because they're quite a bit further north than we are.
Ah, very interesting.
JC is one of a handful of employees here at the winery who gets to bring their dog to work. And he has a beautiful dog, a little girl dog named Harley, and she's not so little anymore. She's big. She's not here today, sadly. What kind of dog is Harley?
Well, we have a friend that has the exact same dog from the same litter. Oh. And they did a DNA analysis to see what was going on. And she is mostly Pyrenees.
Okay.
A little bit of pit bull.
Yeah.
I think there's some lab in her also. Though I took her to the dog park yesterday, and this woman said, your dog has some Great Dane in her. So I think she has maybe some Great Dane, like a small percentage.
Well, she definitely has that build like a Great Dane.
She's long and lanky.
Big and lean, yeah, exactly.
Lean, lanky, but a real love bug, you know.
Yeah.
Well, my other dog, Karma, now I don't bring Karma here very often. She's 16 and a half years old. So she's a little slow, but I do bring her here once in a while. And she's a wonderful dog.
We
really love that dog.
She's still here. She's still around.
She's still around.
That's good.
Yeah.
I got a little worried you weren't bringing her around.
She gets her bi-monthly laser treatment and acupuncture. So
what about the CBD?
And the CBD.
Yes, don't forget the
Every
CBD.
morning she gets her CBD. Yeah, so yes, I recommend CBD oil for everybody.
When you're not here at the winery, sipping wine out of barrels and tasting samples of our wines, what do you like to drink when you're at home?
I'll be quite frank. I like Nicholson Ranch. I'm a wine club member here. And the reason why, because I know what goes into the wines. You know, I mean, if you go to any wine shop or a store and look at wine labels, you discover that there's no listing of ingredients.
Right. There's no law that says there has to be an ingredients list.
So you have no idea
There's
what's
a lot of shit
going
they put in wine.
Exactly. There's a lot of compounds you
produced.
can put into wines to mask flaws. And we don't do that here at Nicholson Ranch Winery. So I know what goes into the wine. So I'm a real fan of drinking our wine. The other wines I do like some white chilled wines from Bonterra. Okay. They do organically grown grapes, as we do too at Nicholson Ranch. Knowing what's in your wine is really important.
Yeah, totally.
Unfortunately, most of us have no clue what's in our wines.
It's kind of an open secret. Everybody knows it, but nobody really, we just buy the cheap wine.
Right. But yeah, you have no idea what goes in that wine.
What about cocktails? What about beer?
I do like beers. I don't drink those as much as I used to. I do like, my wife makes a Moscow Mule with some vodka. And it's chilled.
Yeah.
You know? So on a hot day, that's kind of fun.
With ginger beer?
With ginger beer.
Lime?
Absolutely.
Delicious.
Yes.
If you could sit down and have a glass of wine or a Moscow Mule with someone from the world of science, living or dead, who might it be?
Well, I have two people I'd like to talk to. One that's dead would be Carl Sagan.
Okay.
I do want to get my autograph that I never got.
He was too busy making out with some hot chick.
That's right.
Was that was at NASA or was that at college?
Oh, that was at NASA.
That was at NASA.
That was at JPL.
He's visiting NASA.
He was visiting
he brought his girlfriend with him.
He brought his girlfriend, and his little entourage with people. And
I have to go into the next room to
that's what he did.
Something.
And let me make out. And they were making out. It was like, okay.
Oh, man. Carl Sagan.
Yeah. The other person would be a living person, and I think it'd be Elon Musk.
Okay.
I mean, I think that guy is really kind of pushing the envelope for us to make a move here, and I think it's really exciting what's happened. I mean,
he's pushing the envelope for us to make what move exactly?
I think to actually colonize space, which is, I think, we should absolutely explore space.
What do you think his motive is?
I think he realizes that the Earth is susceptible to a variety of dramatic events. Right. We had this pandemic, dramatic event.
Yeah.
An asteroid strike, that would be a dramatic effect. A solar X-class flare hitting our planet would be disastrous. I mean, if we lost power for 6 months.
I'm going to have to Google that one later.
Yeah. There was an event in 1858 called the Carrington Effect. And it was this astronomer, Carrington, he witnessed an X-class flare coming to Earth, and it hit the planet, and it hit the United States, this flare, and it took down all of the telegraph lines across the United States. If that happened today, that same flare We would blow out transformers, relay stations. We would have no power for months. So you thought the pandemic was bad. At least we had power. What if we had no power for 6 months?
If you combine the fact that the globe is warming and we have no power.
Right. So again, back to Elon Musk. I mean, he realizes that we need to really be prepared because luck favors those who prepare.
Right. But there's also another side of the coin here, though. Elon Musk has the resources and the clout to maybe help us push some things in this planet to, fix things or help us to avoid our eventual self-implosion, which at this rate.
The reality is that rocketry and going to space has given us the telemetry to know about global warming. I mean, if we didn't have these satellites in space to do these measurements, we would be clueless. We wouldn't have real telemetry to look at. So going to space is to our great advantage. Absolutely.
If you're cool with it, I'm cool with it.
I think it's the, you heard about, of course, the Air Force with their new space branch.
The Space Force.
Yeah, so that's interesting that even the government is recognizing that space is a boundary that has to be definitely explored.
It's the final frontier.
It's probably close to the final frontier for sure.
It's the final frontier. I heard that once.
Did you really? Yes, I did too. Did Spock say that? I don't know.
I don't know. They say it in the intro.
Oh, yes. That's a great show. I still love watching that show.
Yeah. How much did they get right in Star Trek?
You mean the original Star Trek series?
Yeah, the original with,
they had the tricorder.
William Shatner.
Well, they had the tricorder. They had, we don't have teleportation, which would be really cool. That would be a nice one to crack, is to have a method to teleport matter through space.
You think that's going to happen? Is somebody working on that?
You know what?
Is Elon working on that?
I would not be surprised. There's all kinds of secret projects through DARPA from the military.
Yeah.
They do all kinds of really interesting research. So that may be one that they're exploring. I mean, it would be cheaper than having a rocket.
Right.
So.
But you have to build the teleportation station wherever you're going to teleport people to, right?
Unless you send it first and then, you wait an hour, then you're ready to go.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around it.
I know. Teleportation would be a really funky experience.
And then time travel.
Going back in time or going in the future? That would be interesting.
Going in the future and meeting yourself.
That would be very an odd experience for sure.
That's why I don't know. I don't know that it really adds up for me. I'd be like, no, I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the movies, the Back to the Future movies as a guide for this whole thing. Look what happened to Michael J. Fox.
So they just had a real problem for sure.
There were issues. You don't want to go back in time and then meet your mom before she's your mom.
Well, it's interesting.
Seduce her. What a life. What a life. Jean-Claude Pijanowski has been my guest on the Tall Mike Wine podcast. Thank you for listening. If you're on Apple Podcasts right now, click whatever you click to give us a rating. And for extra credit, write a review. They tell me it helps a lot. The podcast was conceived and is written, produced, edited, and maintained by yours truly, and I'm also the janitor. For feedback, send me an email to tallmikewine@gmail.com. I'll send you some coasters if you're bold enough to give me your address. You can see some photographic evidence of today's session on Instagram @tallmikewine. And if you tweet, find me on Twitter @tallmikewine69. Episode 15 is in the books. From the Vintner's Room at Nicholson Ranch Winery in Sonoma, California, I am Tall Mike Wine. You can call me Mike. Cheers.